At 4:30 a.m. Eastern Time, someone inside the Pentagon leaked a classified assessment to the Washington Post. The document is marked top secret and dated March 9th, one day before Khamenei's speech. The assessment concludes that the current military campaign has achieved tactical success in destroying Iranian infrastructure, but has failed to achieve any strategic objective. It states that Iran retains the ability to strike American forces indefinitely, that Iranian missile production has not been significantly degraded, and that Iran's nuclear facilities in deep underground bunkers remain intact despite repeated strikes. The assessment goes further. It says that achieving total military victory would require a ground invasion force of at least 200,000 troops, sustained over 18 months at a cost of $3 trillion and an estimated 15,000 American casualties. The conclusion of the document is devastating. It recommends that the administration seek a negotiated settlement within the next 2 weeks before Iran's position strengthens further. Pause. That document was written before Khamenei made his demands public. The Pentagon already knew this war was unwinnable. Now Iran has put terms on the table that make any American victory claim impossible. According to leaks from sources inside the National Security Council, an emergency meeting took place at 1 a.m. this morning. The participants included the President, the Vice President, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, and Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff General C.Q. Brown. The topic was simple. How do we respond to Iran without looking like we are surrendering and without starting a war we cannot win? We have learned from multiple sources familiar with the discussion that the meeting became heated. Secretary Rubio argued for immediate rejection of Iran's demands and a massive escalation of airstrikes to force Iran back to the table. Secretary Hegseth reportedly pushed back hard. He pointed to the leaked Pentagon assessment and said the military does not have the resources to sustain a prolonged campaign while maintaining commitments in Europe and Asia. National Security Advisor Waltz raised the China problem. If the United States rejects negotiations and China openly backs Iran with weapons or financial support, the entire strategic balance in the Middle East shifts permanently. General Brown made the situation worse. He told the room that if Iran closes the Strait of Hormuz, the United States has two options: accept it or go to war to reopen it. Going to war to reopen it means striking Iranian coastal defenses, which means hitting Russian-made S-400 missile systems, which means the possibility of Russian casualties, which means the risk of direct confrontation with a nuclear power. The president asked one question: can we win this without putting American boots on the ground in Iran? General Brown's answer, according to 3 people in the room, was no. Not if Iran has external support from China and Russia. Not if they are willing to accept economic collapse in exchange for resistance. Not if their nuclear program is further along than intelligence assessments predicted. The decision was made to delay any public response for at least 48 hours while back-channel negotiations through Switzerland explore whether Iran's demands are an opening position or a final ultimatum. The legal ramifications are significant. International law experts at Georgetown and Harvard have already published preliminary analyses. They point out that Iran's demand for reparations has precedent in international arbitration. The demand for sanctions relief is consistent with positions taken by the United Nations Security Council in previous negotiations. The demand for American troop withdrawal is framed as restoration of sovereignty, which has support in international law. If this goes to the International Court of Justice or the UN Security Council, Iran has a case that will receive support from a majority of non-aligned nations. This is not just a military crisis. It is a legal and diplomatic crisis where Iran has prepared the ground carefully. Here is the domino effect we are looking at. If the United States agrees to negotiate, regional allies lose faith in American security guarantees. Saudi Arabia starts making deals with Iran. Israel feels abandoned and takes independent military action. American credibility collapses across the Middle East. But if the United States refuses to negotiate, oil prices continue rising. The global economy slides into recession. European allies who depend on Middle Eastern energy supplies pressure Washington to accept a ceasefire. Congress refuses to authorize a ground war. The administration is trapped between humiliation and catastrophe. China is watching this very closely. Beijing sees an opportunity to position itself as the broker of Middle East peace. If China can negotiate a settlement that the United States cannot, it demonstrates to the entire world that American power is no longer decisive. Russia is calculating its own advantages. Every American asset committed to the Middle East is an asset not available for Europe or Asia. A prolonged conflict in Iran serves Russian interests perfectly. A desperate United States can be pressured into concessions on Ukraine or NATO expansion. Where are America's traditional allies? Britain issued a carefully worded statement calling for de-escalation and dialogue. France said the situation requires immediate diplomatic engagement. Germany warned of catastrophic economic consequences if the conflict continues. None of them backed the American position unconditionally. Why? Because they see the same intelligence assessments. They know this war has no military solution. They are protecting their own interests. They are distancing themselves from an American policy that looks increasingly reckless. The economic damage from this war is now measurable in every American's wallet. Political pressure is building fast. So where are we right now? Mojtaba Khamenei has delivered an ultimatum to the United States. Withdraw, lift sanctions, and pay reparations, or face closure of the Strait of Hormuz, Chinese and Russian military support for Iran, and an Iranian nuclear weapon. The Pentagon has concluded the war is unwinnable without a massive ground invasion. The president has gone silent. Oil is at $121. The global economy is pricing in disaster. China and Russia are backing Iran. European allies are hedging. And the clock is ticking on a 30-day deadline that the administration has no strategy to address. He wanted to project strength. He ended up revealing weakness. Reality has a way of asserting itself. The reality is that killing one leader did not end the Iranian government. It created a more radical successor. The reality is that airstrikes did not break Iran's will. They hardened it. The reality is that American military power, as vast as it is, cannot solve every problem. Some conflicts have no military solution. As we head into the next 48 hours, expect desperate attempts to find a face-saving exit. The administration will try to claim that any negotiations were always part of the plan. They will try to redefine victory. They will try to spin withdrawal as strategic repositioning. But here is what cannot be undone. Iran forced the United States to the negotiating table by surviving the initial assault and then making demands backed by credible threats. When a regional power can do that to a global superpower, the balance has shifted. When that shift happens publicly, with the whole world watching, there is no going back to the old arrangement. This is history happening in real time. The decisions made in the next 72 hours will define American foreign policy for the next decade.